Good morning, sunshines. So, I need your 10 sketches. If you haven't already sent them to me, send them to me. But today we're going to talk about drafting. Yay! Now, probably 3/4 of you just said, turn the video off. But please don't, because drafting, the easiest way to think of drafting is that drafting is thinking. One of the great things about drafting is that before you start drafting, you have little idea, maybe a little concept of the overall look or size or scale of something. But when you have finished drafting, you have thought through every particular angle, every component, how the thing is structured, how it is supported, how it is moved, every aspect of the piece you have considered. Again, you are thinking through the process, and because of that, one of the biggest things I'm going to tell you to start off with is you're going to erase, well, I'll put it this way. When I hand draft, I erase well over half of what I draw. And I've been doing this for 40 years. So I'm going to tell you as a beginner, you're probably going to erase 90% of what you draw, because you're going to reconsider it and have better ideas and better options and change what you're thinking or what the thought is. So the reason I tell you that is you always want to start off drawing lightweight lines. As a matter of fact, I would suggest not drawing anything other than lightweight lines until you have the entire draft done. Literally draft the entire draft and then go back in and make it a heavier line weight. Yes, there are two basic ways of drafting. One is hand drafting. One is using the computer, AutoCAD. Today, we're going to spend much more time talking about hand drafting, merely because if you can understand how to hand draft, the computer program is so simple. All it is click and point, and that's it. But if you don't understand what drafting is, hand drafting, you have the added component of figuring out the computer program. So it is much easier to understand the drafting, and once you understand hand drafting, to understand what the computer is trying to know before you get into AutoCAD. So that's where I'm going to start you. And again, if you take advanced classes and this sort of stuff, we can get into AutoCAD. As a matter of fact, at the end of the program today, I'll have a little thing showing you how I drafted a staircase. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to figure out how to do the audio to talk about it, but you get to listen to a little music while I draft a staircase using AutoCAD, so you get to see that. But before we get into any of this, here's a little video talking about how to draft a house. fun. Now, one of the things I want to point out to you, well, a couple things. First of all, they drew lightweight lines until the very end. That's very important. The second thing is they put their title block in first. I would have, whenever I draft, I always put the title block in last, because you can alter, change, reshape the title block if you need to, whereas the drafting needs to take precedence. So if you have a piece of drafting that flows over to that area, you need to draft it first and then figure out someplace else for the title block to be, yes? However, those two small appendages aside, I would also like to point out the little window above in the top of the house. You saw how he drew it with the compass for a little while and then just gave up on the compass and drew it in with your hand. That is perfectly legitimate. A compass is just a tool. A template is just a tool. What you're after is the look of things. The other thing that he did that I wasn't real happy with, he wrote things like the distance in of things as 8 foot and 7 foot. I always would put things as feet and inches. Most things are not going to be round feet. So if it's 8 foot 0 inches, go ahead and put the dash with the 0 double dash on there, just so it gets rid of any questions. And I would never use just strict inches. Even if it's only 4 inches, I would always write 0 foot 4 inches. It just gets rid of any problem if the case, because again, if you just use inches someplace, they may misunderstand something else that is feet and inches. And so there's just lack of, drafting is all about communication. And the more problems you can solve by doing simple things, by always putting feet and inches, just solves all those problems, okay? Just a reminder what he went through. You need a pencil of some sort. He had a 6H and a 2H. You need some sort of architect's scale rule. Ruler's fine. You just have to be able to divide by 4 or divide by 2, depending on if you're going half-inch scale or quarter-inch scale. A T-square is very nice to have. I have several. If you want one, come and get one from me. A couple of triangles, 30, 60, 90 triangle, 45-degree triangle are great. Eraser, invaluable. Gotta have the eraser. Piece of paper or piece of vellum. The difference between vellum and paper, vellum is thin enough that you can actually see through. So for instance, let's say you're doing a ground plan. You could literally put down an old ground plan of the space and then put a piece of vellum over the top of it and still see the walls of the theater, and then just put your new ground plan on top of it so that you don't have to redraw all those lines until everything else is figured out. So you don't have to waste your time drawing the theater because the vellum allows you to see through it. So that's what a vellum piece is. And then of course tape to do that. Again, you have 3 types of lines. Lightweight lines, there's every line you draw. The medium weight line, or what are called construction lines, are the lines that are important. And then there are heavyweight lines. Heavyweight lines are things like walls, things that cost lots of money to break through. They're there, they don't move. Pillars in the proceeding arches that are part of the architecture. Yes, those sort of things are what I would call heavyweight lines. Yes, there are 2 types of representation. One is to have what's called a straight line projection, which is literally the object drawn square on. Again, you're scanning the object. It has no perspective drawing to it. So if it's 8 inches tall in perspective, in scale, you want to, let's say you're using half-inch scale. If it's 8 foot tall, half-inch scale is 4 inches. If you're using quarter-inch call, every quarter of an inch is equal to a foot. An 8 foot tall wall is only 2 inches tall because there are 2 quarter inches in, 8 quarter inches and 2 inches. So in scale, an 8 foot wall is only 2 inches tall. Yes. So that's just a straight line projection, just like the house was. Yes. There are also orthographic projections which show 3 sides of the object all at once. The most common of these is what's called an isometric drawing, in which case both sides, there's a little brick here that Cody's going to show you where it's angled on both sides, 30 or 45 degrees, and it's all on the same scale. So it could be half-inch scale, it could be quarter-inch scale, but whatever it is. You can see the little dotted lines are what the lines that are there, but they're hidden by the parts of the object. Yes, but that's an isometric drawing. An oblique drawing is a drawing where one side is full, just like you drew the straight line projection, and then the 2 receding sides are in the same scale, but they're drawn at 45 degrees or 30 degrees. A cabinet drawing is the exact same thing as an oblique drawing, except the receding side is only half the scale. So if the front side is in half-inch scale, the receding side is in quarter-inch scale. And the reason for that is it just looks better perspective-wise. When you're used to looking at perspective, the depth of it gets you a little crazy if you're looking at it. So again, it's called cabinet drawings because most times that's what they use for cabinetry. Again, here's a little drawing showing you how you sort of blow up and blow out. You got the top view of the staircase, you got the front view of the staircase, you got the side view of the staircase. So the three straight line projections are only what you see looking down at it, and looking in front at it. And then the isometric is what you see when you put all three together. Cool? Cool. All right, typical types of drafting, ground plans. Some very important things about ground plans. You have the plaster line, which is the imaginary line that connects the upstage side of the proscenium wall. It's the little dashes that go across from side to side of the proscenium. Then you have the center line that goes down the center of the stage. The center line is often portrayed as a long dash, short dash, and at the top and the bottom, usually there's a little CL, so people know you're looking at the center line. Then you have a section view, which is basically going down the center line and looking either stage right or stage left at the theater. So you can do things like adjust the height of things, tell you how tall the walls are, tell you where the lighting positions hide behind whatever borders or teasers there may be. But again, those are standard pieces of drafting or ground plans and sections. Yes? Then again, as a designer is going to give you mostly front elevations of the piece, like this little fireplace here. You see the mantle, you see the decorations on one side. Oftentimes, for instance, if there's a decoration that is continuous on both sides, the designer will draw one side of the decoration and then you consider it a reverse and repeat. Whatever the decoration is stage right, it is also the decoration stage left. Then you can also do what are called side elevations, where if you look at the center line there, section E is a view on the left side where they've cut through it and drawn the niche and to show the depth of the fireplace and all that sort of stuff. The front part of it is drawn in elevation D, which again is on the right side of the drawing, and that's showing you the detail, the depth of all the cornice and things that are on the front of the drawing. Yes? So again, those are the type of drawings that you're going to get from your designers. Tech directors will then take those drawings and create what are called rear elevations. A rear elevation shows you where the structure is. So for instance, when we talk about where in flats, where the toggles, where the stiles, where the rails go, is this all made out of fabric? Is it all made out of lumber? Is it all Luan? What is this made out of? Is the niche somehow a piece of plastic that you created? You know, again, you're going to figure out, a technical director will take this drawing and figure out how it is constructed. And then this drawing is what's usually called a rear elevation. Yes. Then the title block is going to have 7 things on it. The drawing number. Again, the drawing number is the only one that really has to be in a consistent spot, because as you're flipping through drawings, it is very helpful if the drawing number is the same spot. It may change from vertical to horizontal, but the number needs to be in the same spot so that you can just flip through the drawings to find drawing 7 of 12 or whatever it is. Yes, but the drawing number needs to be on the drawing. You need to have the title of the show, whatever the title of the show is. You need to have the name of the theater space. So for instance, if you're doing Singing in the Rain and you're doing it at the Springer Opera House, as opposed to Singing in the Rain at the Gazebo Theater, yes? Because again, things are going to change slightly, but things are going to change. What's on the drawing? This would be the front elevation of the fireplace, for instance. It could be your ground plan, could be your section, could be the light plot, whatever the drawing is about. The scale. The scale of the drawing is how much you have altered, or what the representation is a representation of. So for instance, if you have a 1/2 inch scale drawing, every 1/2 inch on the drawing is equal to a foot in reality. So again, if you have an 8 foot tall wall, you have a 4 inch tall drawing, because again, there are 4/2 of an inch in 4 inches. Excuse me, 8/2 of an inch in 4 inches, which is the height of the wall at 8 feet. So every 1/2 inch is equal to a foot. Now, as opposed to what they will tell you in your math class, when it says 1/2 inch equals 1 foot 0, that is a very different scale then 1 foot equals 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch equals 1 foot means that a 4-inch tall drawing in 1/2 inch scale equals an 8 foot tall wall. If you have 1 foot is equal to 1/2 of an inch, if you have a 4-inch tall drawing, it is equal to, I shouldn't have done that, 8 feet. Right? You're taking a very small thing and exploding it and making it larger, as opposed to a very large thing and making it smaller. So in drafting, equal is not transversable, not transverse. You have to, the one scale is how large it is on the paper, the other scale is how large it is in reality. Yes? Hopefully that makes sense. Because I have people often will misprint the scale. The date is very important. Because again, if you have 2 draftings and one of them is dated today and one of them was drafted last week, hopefully today's drawing is more accurate. That's been improved. And then the number 7 is what I call the paper trail. Who drew it? Who designed it? Who the director was? Who the producer is? All those people's names. So if a carpenter is building this or somebody's painting it or whatever's happening to this piece as it goes through the process, yes, if people have a question about any problems that they come across, who's the first person I need to go see? Well, who drew it? Who's the second person I need to go see? Well, who designed it? Well, who's the third person I need to go see? Well, who's the technical director? Who's the director, right? Who can I go see about the answers to these questions that I've come up with? Because it may not, again, as you go from, as my grandfather called it, going from chicken to pig, once you start building things, you can draw things on a drawing that are impossible to create in reality. I know that sounds difficult, but just for instance, having three sides that all have a rake to them is easy to draw. It's a bowl in reality, and that's very difficult to build, and most times they don't even mean bowls, they mean 3 rakes. Yes, but that's gonna create an edge if you have 3 rakes, but oftentimes they don't draw. Anyway, so those are what go in the title block. And again, I would always put the title block in after I have finished the drawing, because I may need to change where the title block needs to go, or at least the orientation of the title block. Cool? Now, this is gonna seem very first grade-ish, maybe kindergartnerish, and it is. But again, because drafting is about communicating, and because one of the ways we communicate is through the written language, here's a brief video showing you how to create letters. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Doug Patt, and this is How to Architect. Today we'll learn how to write like an architect. The basic drafting tool for an architect when working by hand is a parallel rule. You can also use a T-square. I'll be using an Ames lettering guide to create the lines for the lettering. First, we're going to create our horizontal lines using the lettering guide. The guide has a variety of spacing options to create just about any combination you're looking for. I will also be using a small triangle. I've added tape to this one for ink lettering to avoid smearing. I'll also be using a 0.5mm Pentel drafting pencil and Papermate Flair pen for letters. I've created a small grid here to give me some guidance when I lay out the letters. I'd say the most important thing to remember about hand lettering is that your letters need to seem animated while still appearing orderly and neat. I think this is achieved by using a few conventions. For example, you'll notice the letters have some amount of incompleteness. The second diagonal on the A does not follow all the way to the guideline. The bottom of the B or D isn't complete. The bottom line on the E starts in front of the vertical. The second thing is that all the horizontals in the letters are drawn by hand, not using the parallel rule. They all sit at a slight angle, making them dynamic and yet uniform. You'll also notice that I use a ruler for all vertical lines. Lastly, when you're making your O's, Q's, C's, G's, even 8s and 9s, the letters and numbers are simply combinations of semicircles. Even the letter S is made the same way. These are 2 images from my portfolio. They're good examples of how your strings of words will come together to form orderly yet animated paragraphs. This is a quote I found from Tyrone Edwards' Dictionary of Thoughts. I enjoy referring to it from time to time. It seemed appropriate for a YouTube video, because giving people the most amount of knowledge in the least amount of time is really what drives the information age. So remember, hand lettering is about style and legibility. Mine is definitely stylized and probably a little tough to read sometimes. So, thanks for checking out How to Write Like an Architect. I'm Doug Patt.
Again, I'm not saying that even was perfect. I'm just saying it's an architectural style that they have created, but you need to be able to write very clearly and very distinctly your notes. And so whatever your drawing is, whatever your normal handwriting is, it needs to be upgraded when you're drafting. Yes? All right, last thing before we get to the AutoCAD, extension and dimension lines. After you've done your drafting, once you've got the whole thing looking nice, the last thing you add are extension lines, which will go from the tops of people, the bottom of things, sides of objects, the inside of doors, extension lines wherever they go. And then dimension lines are the pieces that point from one extension line to the other. And somewhere in the middle, there's a space so you can write the dimension, 3'6" inches, 8'0" at the end of each extension line, there's no detailing. At the end of a dimension line, you always have an arrow, unless you have a slash. A slash means it's centered on this point. Yes? So if you had an 8-foot flat, and the outer drawing said 8 foot from arrow to arrow, and then a toggle, and it said 4 feet from arrow to slash, that means the toggle is centered on 4 feet. Hopefully that makes sense. So extension dimension lines are very important, and then the last thing, add it. All right, last thing for today. Again, I know drafting is very exciting, but here's a little video of me drafting a staircase with a landing. There is a fault in it at the very end, and if you text me or write me with the fault, I'll give you an extra point on whatever else it is. All right, enjoy, and that's it for the day. Oh, you have 10 sketches due next time, so just remember that. Cool, see you then.